brand recognition and awareness is the key driving force towards long-term and sustainable success for any small business. And using digital marketing as a primary tool to connect with a customer base is gaining steam and proving to be an effective and a noteworthy tool when conducting cold outreach and promoting your business to the masses. According to my friends over at Statista, an average of $534 is spent on digital ads for any small business per month in order to get their name out there and more eyes on the services that they offer. And on average, it is estimated that most small businesses spend approximately 8% of their entire budget on digital marketing or other forms of marketing in order to get their name out there to the public. Aziz Musa is an innovative leader in the field of digital marketing, whose journey in the space can best be described as both fascinating and educational. As the youngest public company CEO in the UK, he's already made significant strides towards making a dent of impact in the field of digital marketing. His significant turning point in business came in 2017 during the war in Sudan when he founded Crust Digital. Among political unrest, Aziz stayed focused on his vision of building a thriving digital economy among mounting unrest in the Middle East. He strategically relocated to Egypt, which ensured his personal safety and the idea of his continuing thriving business. Today, it stands as one of North Africa's premier digital agencies. And Musa joined me this week to talk everything relating to digital marketing, his incredibly inspiring journey of survival, perseverance, and so much more, and how other small business leaders can take a page of inclusive leadership from his playbook. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. Absolutely, my friend. So, Aziz, if you're ready, my friend, I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program, my friend. And I'm super excited to learn about your role and life and business, my friend. Great to see you this afternoon, and thank you so very much for being here.
It's absolutely my pleasure.
Absolutely. So, my friend, tell me, I'm curious because they tell me that your life's work is sort of being in digital marketing and talking about both business resilience and innovation, my friend. So, how do those two things sort of intersect with your story and time in business? Tell me all about it. I'm fascinated.
Yeah, I think that resilience is probably one of the most underrated skills of entrepreneurs. And the people in life, I think we've gotten so mollycoddled and so comfortable nowadays that people have kind of almost forgotten how to be resilient. They get so flaky over the smallest things. They lose confidence and lose their sort of internal strength and willingness to push forward. And I think I've just been fortunate enough to have found myself in difficult positions, but also to be of the type of person who wants to test themselves, and yeah, like I think that's the key to developing resilience, particularly in business, right? Business is tough. It's not it's not like it was, 20 years ago. Everything is competition. Everything is tough. There are challenges everywhere. The markets are fluctuating all the time, and more often than not, it's those who can sort of drive through those challenges that find themselves being successful at the other end. So I've always tried to sort of focus on that, and that's helped me a lot through my career. It helped me probably most last year because I was living in the Sudan in Africa, and I built a social enterprise there, like in digital marketing, training people in digital marketing. I was fortunate enough to be able to sort of train 4,000 youth for free of charge over the time that I was there, and help them build multiple businesses. And then a war broke out on the 15th, sorry, of April last year, and it happened right in front of our offices, like right there in front of where we lived. And so that was an incredible challenge, and a really difficult moment that we kind of had to get through. But I think all of the experience that I'd had in life allowed us to navigate those choppy waters and find our way up to Egypt and carry on our business as we had.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'm curious to get your thoughts on innovation as a whole, because, innovation and having to constantly reinvent yourself is a normal part of business. So how do you look at effective business innovation?
Yeah, this is a topic that's really close to my heart, Kevin. So thanks for asking about it. When I did my MBA, my master's, I chose to do my final dissertation on innovation in businesses, and I spent a lot of time in Google at the time, in Google and in Facebook, and also in startups, really exploring how they continue to innovate. And I think that there are lots of different models, but there are some sort of key rules that everyone should apply to themselves in life and in business. The first one is to be open to ideas from any industry. Most of the best innovations in their given industry actually exist as a standard template in other industries. So taking the time to really, talk to people from other industries, do things like this where you get to talk to people from around the world, learn about how other industries are solving their problems is the first step. And they call that cross-border, sort of cross-market innovation. The second step is being open to ideas from other people who don't necessarily have your experience. And this is one of the things that I found most valuable, is that I'd learn most of the new techniques that we're going to apply in our business come from the new people who have just started, right? So in the first 6 months, they've come from other companies or they've used other technologies, and we're always looking to improve either efficiency or grow our client base or whatever it is. And we use their sort of historical knowledge to inform different things that we can do. I think a lot of people think that innovation is purely around the act of sitting down and creating, or purely around problem solving at a mass scale. But innovation can happen at a really, really small scale, right? So as I sort of sit down, look down to my right, I've got my list of tasks for the day. Whenever I'm doing a task, I'm always thinking to myself, can that be automated? Is there someone somewhere in the world who's doing this task in an automatic fashion that I can learn from? So it can be as small as just like at a task level, and it can be as big as a strategic level. What I found most common, though, in the companies that I visited whilst doing my dissertation, is that those who innovate fastest and most effectively dedicate time to innovation. And they literally dedicate a portion of their employees' time in the week or in the month to ideating around entirely new ideas. And they won't give it as free time. They'll give them problems to solve, and then they'll sit and discuss how different individuals have solved those problems. And the idea of sitting there and discussing those ideas and the solutions that they've come up with tend to spawn new ideas. And so they're constantly putting innovation at the heart of their business by dedicating time and resources to that activity.
Yeah, and there's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is because, my friend, was born with cerebral palsy. So the type of cerebral palsy that I have means that I don't have enough oxygen to walk in my legs from a normal perspective. So one of the things that I do is, as a professional speaker, I go around and talk to organizations about the positive benefits of hiring people with disabilities and the competitive advantage that it provides to businesses. So I'm wondering uh, your thoughts on what it means to really diversify a workforce and how individuals with disabilities can really be an asset in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely. It's another great question. So I was fortunate enough to have a mentor who was a well-known CEO in the UK. And it was probably 15 years ago now that I had this mentor. And I spoke with him every couple of weeks. And there was one of the lessons that he gave me. One of the things that he used to say is, as a leader, your job is to surround yourself with the best brains that you can afford. And here's something, Aziz, that you need to know about brains. Brains just organic matter. They don't have gender, they don't have a race, they don't have a religion, and they don't really care if the body that they sit in works or otherwise. They're just brains. And therefore, hire the best brains that are around you. And so I think that ultimately, assuming that in my world, physical disabilities haven't, they're never really a barrier to success in our industry, because in the digital space, it's mostly office space, it's mostly desk space, and so it's really about hiring the brains and giving those brains the opportunity to excel in the workforce. So that's always been my philosophy. But I think, the last company in the UK that I worked at, there are other very specific advantages. So, Kevin, you'll have lived through your life, and you will have solved problems that most of us will never experience, right? And so in the act of solving those problems, whatever those problems may have been, it could be something that's relatively mundane, or it could be something that's very significant. But in solving those problems, you've almost accessed a different part of your brain to other people. And the knowledge that resides within you can't be replicated anywhere else. So the advantages of not seeing disability are not just for the individual, but for the organization as a whole. You bring entirely new perspectives onto potential problems that may exist in the workforce. And I'm curious, have you experienced that, where you've entered into like an organization and spotted things that actually for you are quite easy to resolve because you've experienced something similar in your lifetime?
Yeah, so whenever I go into businesses, one of the first things that I look for is what are their level of education, and how can I solve their education gap. So, for example, if you want someone to do uh, repetitive repetitive tasks, but they have trouble sitting at a desk uh, for long periods of time. One of the things that we tell employers that they can do is make sure that you put people in leadership positions that have been through this lived experience. So if you're someone who needs to get up and move around from using myself as an example, if I sit for longer periods of time, my muscles contract back faster. So I work from for between 30 to 45 minutes, and then I take a break, and then I move around, and then I go back and finish what I have to do. So when we talk about working with employers, it starts with the education piece for me, because once I know what their knowledge level is, it makes it easier for them and for myself to work together. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, so that is knowledge that you are sort of privy to, but that everybody will benefit from. So I think that, like, even just talking to you, like, there are certain things you were saying that I hadn't considered before, and isn't I think that that is sort of a leader's job, right? Is to diversify the opinions that exist and the knowledge base that exists around the table, so that we can consider like. All opportunities that exist within the workforce. So yeah, the work you're doing is really powerful.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'll give you one more example. You know, when I talk to employers, I tell them to look at inclusion as, in the workplace anyway, as a Thanksgiving Day table, and you pull out a chair of inclusion at the Thanksgiving Day table, because whenever we eat Thanksgiving or have Thanksgiving dinner, we talk about what we're thankful for. So if we pull out a chair at the table of inclusion, then everyone has a chance to be heard. So I just wanted to share that analogy with you, and I hope it helps moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great analogy, and again, like I think that aside from everyone being heard, I just think that there are experiences that everybody can learn from and gain insight from. So yeah, that's a really helpful analogy.
Yeah, well, it leads to my next question because we talked about the power of listening, and I think as a leader, one of the best things you can do is to be an effective listener. Would you agree with that?
Oh, 100%. Two ears, one mouth. That should be the ratio of working.
Well, that's I think Judge Judy coined that term. You were given two ears and one mouth for a reason, right?
Exactly right. 100%.
Yeah, and Aziz, tell me, what do you think is the definition of a business trailblazer? What does that mean to you?
Listen, I think that a business trailblazer is someone who's uh, forged a new path that previously didn't exist or only existed to an extent. And it's it's different across different markets and industries. I think, for example, in the US, it's really challenging to be a business trailblazer, right? Because you're waiting for new technologies, or you're inventing new technologies in order to carve out new niches and new opportunities that never previously existed. Whereas in places like Africa, being a trailblazer is actually much easier, taking existing technologies but opening up markets that have never had access to those technologies, and opening therefore business opportunities, growth opportunities, revenue opportunities that didn't previously exist. Equally counts as sort of opening up those markets. There are lots of terms like that, business trailblazer and things like that, and I think that to a large extent, what it really refers to is opening up things that didn't previously exist. Yes, for your benefit, but for the benefit, more importantly, of the people behind you who can take advantage of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that you've had quite the journey in the corporate world of startups. I know you were one of the youngest founders for a public company and the CEO of an innovative company called Cross Digital, my friend. And talk to me about sort of fueling your fire as a young entrepreneur and your journey specifically in entrepreneurship.
Yeah. Well, what fuels my fire is to make an impact, right? So I feel happiest when I'm doing something with purpose. And I was, as you mentioned, I was the youngest public company CEO in the UK for a time, and it was a listed company, and it was a beautiful company, a great team, and I really enjoyed it. But I really felt like the work that I was doing was personally meaningless. It was work. It was work to improve shareholder value and all of those nice things, but I really didn't feel like I was making an impact on people's lives in any meaningful or positive way. And that's why when I set up Kush Digital sort of 7 years ago, the heart of my objective was to help impact people's lives in a positive way. And I chose to do that through training, through development, through opening up and investing in entrepreneurs, and using Kush Digital, a digital marketing agency, as the vehicle to do that. And I think that's what kind of, as you put it, fuels my fire. It's what gets me up in the morning, is knowing that if I go in today, I'm going to have a positive impact on someone's life. I'm going to spend time with people who are going to value and learn from my experience, and who are going to develop themselves individually. And that kind of feeds into our clients too, right? So when we build that culture of making an impact, then our teams are always focused on the same thing, making an impact on our clients too. And then it becomes like a virtuous cycle of positive impact. That is where I find myself most at home. I find myself listen, I can sleep well at night. I'll go home tonight and I'll get to bed and I'll be like, yeah, okay, I did good today. I did a lot of good stuff today. And that, I think, is missing from a lot of organizations. I always use this term, a muck job, like a Big Mac, right? People have got lots of muck jobs, yeah, and they're important. It's important to have an income, but if you can have an income and make a difference, it's just like multiples more powerful, or at least I find that to be the case anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And, life is all about paying it forward, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's correct to an extent, in that it's partly about paying it forward, but it's partly about paying it back too, right? So I've been fortunate enough to have some great mentors, to work for some great companies, to learn a lot from different industries, and it would be almost wrong of me to disappear with that knowledge down a hole. I'd rather spend the time sharing that knowledge across the people that work with me.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I also wanted to talk to you about using technology as an advantage point in business versus really valuing the human capital of the worker. So how do you think we can strike a balance between utilizing technology but also not replacing the human worker as well?
That's such a topical point, right? Because as artificial intelligence has really exploded over the last 9 months, and as it will over the next 2 years, I think that this question is becoming increasingly pertinent, right? Increasingly important. So let me tell you what we did as an organization, because I think it's probably a good example of how to square that circle, how to solve both of those problems at the same time. As an agency, we were really, really early adopters in AI. So we started using AI tools from the beginning of last year, actually toward the end of 2022. So, we were super early in adopting AI technologies. And what we found was that the technologies that exist today can massively increase the efficiency of every individual person. So there are two ways to look at that, right? The first way to look at that is, okay, you employ 100 people, you can make them 10 times more effective with the use of technology. So we only now need 90 people. And I'm sure there are some business owners who look at it that way. I looked at it in an entirely different way. I looked at it from the opposite perspective. Okay, so we've got 100 people and we can now do the work of 1,000 people thanks to AI. So what we ended up doing is really focusing on growth, getting a lot of new clients, and then working with AI to improve our efficiency and actually paying people significantly more as well, because we were able to make so much more money through the use of artificial intelligence. And I think that is the most effective and ethical approach. Now, the AIs that will come, the advances in technology that are going to come over the next 12 months, will make certain industries obsolete. I think that the role of a graphic designer, for example, and there are hundreds of millions of graphic designers all around the world, I think that role will become if not obsolete, entirely different to what it is now. And so, we have a whole team of graphic designers, and we're not sitting there waiting for that to happen. What we're doing is we're reskilling them now. We're reskilling them in SEO, we're reskilling them in paid advertising and in social media marketing and in lead generation, knowing that in a year's time, their role will either be fundamentally different or won't exist, and then they can easily transition into another role. And I think that organizations that take that view and prepare for those things now will have a significantly more loyal workforce, but also will be solving their problems before those problems even come to fruition, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I know one of your passions is helping to lead businesses through adversity and really setting them up for a resilient future. So what do you think is the key to leading a business through an adverse period in order for them to come out the other side?
Preparation. I think preparation is the key to sort of navigating choppy waters, to navigating difficult times, and flexibility. And those two things go hand in hand. So what I've seen in a lot of organizations that I've mentored is this fixed and rigid idea of what they are. And the problem with that is that if a new technology comes along or a market shift happens, they are basically stuck in this paradigm of what they believe themselves to be. And so, what I do within my own organizations and what we do at Kush Digital is we always think about the next step. Okay, what's the next thing that could happen? Be that economic, be it in sort of climate change, be it in anything. What's the next thing that could happen? And if it happened, how would we react to it? And we play games like this. In fact, I just came out of one of those now where we just hypothesized, okay, if this happened, what would we do? And so that process, if you formalize that process and then create plans for different scenarios, you find yourself so much better prepared than other organizations. And I think that's one of the key opportunities that many companies miss, is that I think it was Bill Gates who said, he was asked how Microsoft was able to grow so rapidly and become so dominant in the technology space or in the software space. And he said, whenever there was an upcoming downturn, we just made sure we survived. And if you think about it, a market, you can grow in terms of market share, you can grow two ways. You can take market share from other companies and continue to, or you can grow through acquiring new customers. Well, if there's a downturn and you survive, but everyone else around you doesn't, then de facto your market share increases. And that's down to being prepared and being willing to take those difficult decisions when those times come, so that you can come out the other end stronger than when you entered. So yeah, preparation, not being rigid about your own perception of yourself as an organization, and being flexible. I think they're the two most important things.
Yeah, absolutely. And Aziz, I'm also curious to ask you about the sales process and lead generation. I'll use myself as an example. So every morning that I wake up, I am sort of obsessed with lead generation and the sales process. As a motivational speaker who talks to organizations about inclusion and building an inclusive workforce, as I shared earlier. But I'm curious, from a tactical business standpoint, how do you think the sales process and lead generation can be interconnected and to be improved, to be more efficient as well?
Yeah, so our approach to lead generation has always been around just offering like extraordinary amounts of value for free. That's like what we do. So we write loads of white papers. We do a podcast. We write white papers for individual companies, and we just distribute that content for free. And the reason we do that is because we find that leads that come to us just have it's not about their propensity to close. It's not about whether they're likely to close as customers or not, because outbound and inbound tend to have a reasonably similar conversion rate once you get past the prospecting stage. But it's about their longevity as a client and having that long-term relationship. And a client that comes to you because they have downloaded one of your white papers and gained value from that has already built in a level of trust in your business that kind of buys you some time in order to show the impacts that you can have on them. And so that's really, I think, one of the key ways that we approach it is that we tend to do probably a similar thing to what you're doing, creating this content you're doing essentially for free, you're distributing it for free, and people get value from it. And if they do get value from it, they'll reach out to you. And the same is true of me, right? So people who listen to your podcast and are thinking at the time, oh, maybe we could use that kind of approach in our digital marketing, they'll reach out to me. So that, I think that approach is much more valuable than just cold outreach. That said, I understand a lot of organizations, have to drive sort of cold outreach because they're brand new into a market or they have incredibly high growth targets or whatever it is. But because our objective as a business is to make a positive impact on people's lives, and that doesn't mean our objective is to grow financially. That isn't the number one thing that drives us. We grow financially only so we can continue to have a positive impact. And so it's not so critical for us to go out and acquire customers. We can deal with like a slow inflow of customers through inbound because our organization is designed that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to also ask you about the prospect of business creativity and how the digital landscape of that space has become easier. So how do you think people can use business creativity to also affect them in the digital world as well? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so I think that creativity in our space in particular has become, as you said, significantly easier, but more accessible to more people, right? So essentially, if you think back to, I'm not sure how old you are, Kevin. How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, so it's funny that you should ask. So last Monday was actually my 35th birthday, so I just turned 35.
Well, happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
So you will remember a time before Canva, right? And if you wanted to have like a graphic design done, you needed a graphic designer who had Photoshop and then tools like Canva democratized that whole creative process. I mean, I'm not in any way comparing a true graphic designer to someone who uses Canva, because I use Canva all the time and I'm frankly awful at it. You either have that creative ability or you don't, and we've got a whole team of people who do. But the fact that it is democratized and that everyone has access to it is really, really valuable. And I think that process will continue, that democratization. So now you've got DALL-E, you've got Midjourney, and you've got a whole plethora of tools that are coming out and evolving all the time using AI, which will essentially allow anyone who has a voice to speak to create and design incredibly beautiful content. And it's nascent at the moment. It's in its early phases right now. I would say it's nowhere near as competent as a real human being, but it will get better over time. And so I think that creativity in a business context has become sort of almost spread to the point where we're reaching the point of pre-email. Before emails came out, we all sent letters and we spent time on the phone. Then email came out, and then everyone could communicate basically instantly. So the issue of communication essentially disappeared overnight. So the issue of design creativity, I think, will disappear overnight, but then that will create a new frontier of what creativity is. And there, I think, is where all the excitement exists. Where can businesses really push the needle in terms of creating new ideas, new business opportunities, using technology or even without technology. Over time, though, and I've said this before, I honestly believe that the advent artificial intelligence in the span of time will lead conversations like this between two human beings to be way more important than they are right now. And I think that we will crave human connection. in a way that we've probably, as a species, never craved human connection before. And I think that over time, we will end up valuing face-to-face or even digital interactions like this way more than we currently do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to also talk to you about leadership and mindset and creating strategies that can also translate to an elite mindset. So, what are your thoughts between leadership and mindset and how we can craft those two things effectively?
Yeah, I think in leaders, I'm still not sure whether leaders are made or born. I'm 43 years old, and I think I've had this question for as long as I can remember. Are you born a leader, or can you be a leader? And I'm still not sure. I think probably some people are born, but I still definitely have seen people who are exceptional leaders who never showed that propensity to be toward leadership earlier in their years. So there's definitely an element of it being built within us. And that part that's built, I think, is mindset. It is a willingness to just keep moving forward, a willingness to stay calm under relentless pressure. And more importantly than anything else, a desire to create a safe environment for people to work, express their views without fear of punishment, chastisement, or any negative consequences. True leadership, I think, in a business context, is really about creating an environment where people can be the very best that they can be, knowing that not everybody's best is the same. There are different people who are exceptional in certain areas, but if you create an environment where everyone can express themselves and be the best that they can be in a really safe space, I think you've done your job as a leader. And I think that comes down to being really comfortable with yourself personally as an individual, having great self-awareness, being comfortable with yourself, being accepting of everyone's points of view, having no kind of biases or heuristics, negative heuristics in your mind. And making sure that everyone's got a super clear understanding of what the vision is for the organization. And those things are easy to say. It's easy to say, be resilient. Those words are easy to say, they pop out of your mouth nice and easily, but actually in times of challenge, that's really hard, to not lose your temper, to not lose your mind, to stay really calm, to exude calmness under pressure, I think is a really powerful trait. And I don't necessarily think that is a born trait. I think that's something that people learn through experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And, when you talk about your experience in product management and really being nimble within the market, and I'm curious if you could talk for a moment about the importance of being nimble and responsive rather, to what the market is really telling us, because that ultimately is a big part of business success, isn't it?
It most certainly is. And I think that there's a real challenge nowadays because there's a balance between being nimble and then being impetuous, where you got to be able to. There are so many opportunities in front of everyone. Every organization has got 50 opportunities in front of them, and so choosing the right one and not half doing all 50 is really the key. And I think that part of that comes down to experience. Part of it, though, is just down to research, really taking the time to understand opportunities and knowing that choosing to not do something is often more valuable than choosing to do something. So I think, I remember working at Photobox, we always had people who had great ideas, and there were lots of them. There were hundreds of great ideas in front of us. But my job as a leader was not only to select the ideas that we were going to execute based on the data, but also to execute them really, really quickly so that we could understand if in fact there was an opportunity there or not. And that's really, I think at Photobox, of the years that I was there, that's where I really honed that skill of being able to spot opportunities and being able to execute them quickly so that we could understand if it was worth further investment or not.
Yeah, and I'm going to combine one of my last two questions together because they're sort of interconnected. I'm curious to ask you about, trends in digital marketing, and what do you see as the forward-thinking vision for the industry moving forward, and how do you think it can help us sell projects more efficiently and reach more people? I'm curious to get your thoughts there.
I think that there's two futures for the digital marketing industry. There's the medium term, which I kind of define as the next 3 years, and then there's long term. In the medium term, what we're going to see is extreme levels of personalization, right? So right now, as a digital marketer, I can target based on behavioral demographics. Yeah. So if you're on Facebook and you are a CEO or a founder of an organization and you live in, let's say, Nevada, I could target you based on those variables and your age and the things that you like. But ultimately, I'm targeting a range of people with a single creative. I think the next big evolution, which is only just around the corner, is for me to be able to target you personally. So you, Kevin, will see adverts on Facebook or on Instagram, which will be directed at you directly through the power of AI and programmatic learning. So I think that in the next 3 years, what we're going to see is such extreme levels of personalization that it will almost become meaningless. And that will lead to the second evolution. So what I mean by it will almost become meaningless is that when you're bombarded with advertising, you tend not to see the advertising. However personalized those ads are, they tend to sort of disappear. They fade from your site. And so I think what that will lead to is the second era of digital marketing, which is anti-digital marketing. I honestly believe that we're in an industry which will evolve to the point where what we do is actually connect people with people, real conversations, real face-to-face. This is why this podcast of yours and the thousands of other podcasts that exist in the world are so important. Because actually, I think that in the next sort of 5 to 8 years, real human interaction is going to be the truest form of marketing, and everything else will be the noise that fades into the background.
Yeah, absolutely. And Aziz, my final question for you today is how I end all of my podcasts, my friend, and that's by asking you about your own personal and professional legacy and how you want your legacy to be defined.
I would like to be remembered, and I think that's it. I think I'd just like to be remembered. No, I think I'd like to be remembered as someone who made a positive impact on people's lives. Now, there's some people who want to do that to millions scale. That would be great. But frankly, if I leave a legacy of 10,000 people who were positively impacted in their lives and their careers through the work that I did, then that is more than enough for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And my friend, just out of personal curiosity, what do you think is the key to international business success? Because I know that you have quite the hand in that, my friend. So what do you think is the key to international business success?
The rules of human behavior apply across the world. The only thing that changes is either language or culture, or both. And I think that success internationally really depends on you taking the time to learn the language if necessary, but more importantly, learn the culture and work within the norms of any new society. And I've experienced this a lot in my career, both across Europe. Even though we talk about Europe as like one thing, it really isn't. France is entirely different to Germany, is entirely different to the Netherlands, and then across the world too. And every country has things that are normal, behaviors, interactions, ways of speaking, ways even of asking questions, which are normal to that country. And it's really important to be successful internationally to understand those microcultural traits and work within the confines of what is normal in that space. And I think that's why a lot of companies that I've seen in the past, particularly US-based companies that move into Europe, they often struggle with the workforce because purely the way of working is so different. And the way of interacting with employees and valuing employees is so different in Europe than it is to the US. But that applies everywhere. Even where I am now, I'm in Egypt right now, is completely different to the country that I was in prior to Egypt. And so, taking the time to really understand those cultural nuances and working within the confines of that cultural, cultural tapestry is probably the highest value thing you can do.
Absolutely. And Aziz, finally tell me if people want to get connected with you, what's the best way they can do that?
The easiest way to connect with me is on LinkedIn. Just search Aziz Musa, or you can email me aziz@kush.digital. That's CUSH.digital.
Fantastic. Well, Aziz, I really want to thank you for being a transformational leader in the space of digital marketing, my friend. Your work in the space and time on my behalf is most appreciated this afternoon, and I want to thank you for being here.
I want to thank you too, Kevin. I really enjoyed this discussion. Thanks for all the great work that you do.